Josiah Kelly's desperate search, rescuing family from Ottawa captivity in 1864. A storm of gunfire cuts through the night. As Fanny Kelly's family is ambushed, in an instant, her husband, hearing the carnage from a distance, is faced with an impossible choice: escape with his life or die trying to save his family. What unfolds next will leave you breathless. This is a story of survival, and it's one you'll never forget. Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories to find out what happened. The night turned upside down in a heartbeat. As gunfire ripped through the camp, bullets flew fast and hard, cutting down anything in their path. Reverend Sharp didn't even have a chance to react. He was reaching into the wagon for a bag of sugar, something to share with a group that had rolled up earlier. When the shots hit him, he dropped like a sack of flour, sprawling across the wooden boards, hands still gripping the goods he thought might keep the peace. Off in the distance, Josiah Kelly stopped dead in his tracks. He'd been messing with some gear for supper when the noise hit him like a slap. He whipped around and saw it all in a flash. His wife, Fanny's face white as a sheet, their little girl clinging to her, the whole camp falling apart. The air stank of smoke and panic, shouts bouncing off the trees. He'd left his rifle leaning against a rock earlier, figuring they were just hosting some travelers now staring at the mess. He knew he was outmatched. No gun, no help, just him, against a pack of attackers he couldn't even count. His stomach dropped cold and heavy, like he'd swallowed a stone. But Josiah wasn't the type to freeze up for long. His brain kicked into gear, piecing things together fast. These weren't random bandits, they were Ottawa warriors, and he'd heard enough stories to know they didn't always kill everyone. Sometimes, they kept folks alive, especially women and kids. To trade later, it wasn't a sure thing, but it was something. If he ran in now and got himself shot, Fanny and the girl would be stuck, with nobody to come for them. "I'll find a way," he hissed to himself. Jaw tight, he'd scrape together whatever he had left, money, supplies, anything to get them back. Maybe he'd track the warriors down. Maybe he'd bargain, either way. He had to stay alive to do it, so he bolted. Arrows zipped past him, close enough to hear the whistle. One snagged his sleeve, another scraped his arm, leaving a sting he barely felt. He caught sight of Mr. Wakefield hitting the dirt, blood soaking through his shirt. Dead, or close to it, Mr. Larimore darted by, panting hard, heading for some trees up ahead. Josiah went the other way, legs churning, until he hit a patch of tall grass and sagebrush. He dropped low, flattening himself against the ground, the smell of dry earth filling his nose. The dark crept in fast, hiding him. As he held his breath, waiting for any sign he'd been spotted. Every snap of a twig made his heart jump, but he stayed put, mind racing. He couldn't shake the pictures in his head. Fanny screaming, their daughter crying. Maybe dragged off into the night. Was she fighting back? Did she even have a chance? It was July 12, 1864. Out by Little Box Elder Creek in Wyoming Territory. And their little Group 5 wagons. A handful of folks headed west. Hadn't seen it coming later. Counts pegged the attackers at around 2. Ottawa warriors, a force that smashed through them in minutes. 5 men were dead before anyone could blink. The rest scattered or nabbed. People still argue about why it happened. Some say it was payback for settlers pushing into native land. Others tie it to the Colorado War heating up nearby. Doesn't matter much, the damage was done. Josiah knew one thing from the talk around trading posts. The Ottawa took captives. Sometimes he'd heard of ransoms, horses, blankets, cash swapped months down the line. That was his lifeline now, the one thread he could grab onto. Hunkered down in the grass, chest tight, he ran the numbers in his head. If they kept Fanny and the girl alive, he'd have time to hunt them down or buy them back. The shooting had stopped the night, gone quiet. Except for the wind, but he couldn't move yet. He'd made it out, sure. But it didn't feel like winning. Not with his family still out there, somewhere in the hands of those warriors, Whatever came next, he'd have to figure it out step by step. Starting with the moment he could stand up and breathe. Again, Josiah Kelly stayed low in the sagebrush. The night closing in around him. From where he hid, he could see the hills as the dark covered the camp, hiding the wrecked wagons and bodies scattered from the ambush. The sounds filled in the rest, wood breaking as the Ottawa warriors smashed open boxes, their voices sharp and quick in the air. Then came the part that stopped his breath, their war song starting up low and steady. As they got on their horses and rode off, the sound carried across the Wyoming hills, fading into the distance that July night in 1864, taking any clue about Fanny and their daughter with it. His mind kept running. He swore he heard Fanny calling Josiah, "Help us," mixed with their little girl's cries. It hit him hard enough that he almost jumped up, ready to run back and fight or die trying, but he balled his fists and stayed down. Going in was pointless. He'd seen at least 100 warriors, maybe more in the chaos. 5 men were already dead from the first shots. Along Little Box, Elder Creek, their small group of emigrants, no match for the Ottawa, later counted at around 250 by those who made it out. Josiah forced himself to think straight. He'd picked up from traders on the Platte River that the Ottawa didn't always kill captives. Women and kids especially might be kept for ransom. History backs this. Plains tribes traded prisoners, like the 1865 swap, where a Cheyenne group handed over to white women for horses and blankets. It wasn't certain, but it was something. He muttered, "I've got to make it through this," barely audible if he stayed alive. He'd use whatever the raiders left, his horse, a few bucks, anything to get his family back, either by following the warriors or dealing with them. The camp kept making noise, crates splitting, the Ottawa yelling as they grabbed what they could. Josiah stayed flat grass, scratching his face. Every snap of wood felt like a jab, like they were tearing through his stuff, maybe taking Fanny's shawl or the girl's doll. Were they still there, scared stiff, or already dragged off? He couldn't tell, and it ate at him. Then he heard footsteps quiet, creeping close to his spot. He stopped breathing, listening as the dirt crunched nearby. It wasn't one of his people. The steps were too careful, an Ottawa scout looking for anyone left. Josiah's heart pounded, and he pressed tighter to the ground. Watching the dark, he braced for a tomahawk or a knife to flash down. "Don't find me," he thought, jaw tight as the steps stopped just yards away. After a tense moment, the warrior moved on. The sound fading out, Josiah didn't move. Even when things went quiet, the war song was gone. The camp, a faint hum. He knew the Ottawa took captives sometimes. Fanny Kelly's own account, written later, would prove she and others survived that night. But right then, Josiah had only a slim hope and a rough idea. The attack wasn't random. Some tie it to settlers crowding tribal land, others to the Colorado War spreading west. Whatever the reason, the Ottawa left a trail he could chase. He'd start by staying alive, then take it one step at a time. The Ottawa warriors had ridden off, their war song a distant memory, but he wasn't out of danger yet. His ears caught a new sound, not footsteps this time, but a dry, buzzing rattle right next to him. He froze, eyes darting to the side. A rattlesnake, thick and coiled, had slid up close, its head raised and fangs bare. Hissing, a warning. The Wyoming plains were crawling with them. Hundreds, maybe thousands, thriving in the rocky hills and grassy patches. Along Little Box, Elder Creek, this one was big, easily 4 feet long, its tail shaking like a maraca. In the dark, the soft crunch of boots stopped short. That Ottawa scout, the one creeping around just moments ago, was still close to close. Josiah held his breath, watching as the snake's rattle cut through the quiet. The warrior muttered something low, a quick string of words Josiah couldn't catch, then backed off fast. More rattles kicked up nearby, other snakes stirred up and guarding their nests. Adding to the chorus, The scout didn't stick around to test his luck. Rattlesnake bites were a death sentence out here. No doctor for miles, and the Ottawa knew it. His footsteps faded into the hills, leaving Josiah alone with his unexpected rescuer. Josiah waited, counting the seconds until the rattling eased off. The snake slithered away, disappearing into the grass, and he let out a shaky breath. "Guess 101, he mumbled half to himself, brushing dirt off his hands. He didn't waste time after that. He eased out of the weeds, slow at first, checking every shadow for movement. Nothing, no warriors, no snakes, just the wind kicking up dust. He got to his feet, legs stiff from lying still so long, and took a quick look around. The camp was a dark smudge behind him, maybe a quarter mile off its fires. Long stamped out, he turned east, picking up his pace, heading for the open hills. He didn't run straight, too risky with Ottawa scouts still out there. Instead, he cut a wide arc, sticking to the uneven ground, where ridges and rocks could hide him. The attack had hit on July 12, 1864, and the Ottawa estimated at 250 by later. Reports weren't sloppy, they'd fanned out after the raid. Sweeping for stragglers like him, Josiah knew the terrain, gave him a shot. The Wyoming Territory was rough country. Hills stretching miles, dotted with scrub and gullies. He'd traveled it enough to know where to duck, out of sight, aiming for a trader's route he'd heard. Ran east toward Fort Laramie, some 80 miles off. His boots crunched on loose gravel as he moved. Keeping low the rattlesnake bit wasn't luck. It was proof the land itself could turn the tables. Snakes weren't rare here. Trappers logged dozens of sightings that summer alone. And bites killed more than a few settlers each year. The Ottawa warrior backing off made sense. Why risk a fight with venom when he'd already won the night? Josiah kept that in mind, scanning the ground as much as the horizon. He wasn't safe yet. Not with Fanny and their daughter still out there. Likely hauled off with the raiding party. But he was alive, moving, and that was enough to build on. One step east, then another. Each one a promise to find them no matter what it took. Josiah Kelly pushed on through the hills, his legs burning from the miles he'd already covered. He couldn't take the straight path, not with Ottawa scouts, likely still combing the area after the July 12, 1864, attack along Little Box Elder Creek. He stuck to the rougher ground instead, weaving around ridges and dipping into shallow draws, to stay out of sight. The Wyoming Territory stretched wide and empty. Ahead of him, rocky hills rolling out for miles. He'd been moving east since the rattlesnake scared off that warrior, aiming for a bigger wagon. Train he'd heard was camped along the Oregon Trail. Maybe 20 or 30 miles off. Every step kicked up dust, and his throat was dry as sandpaper. But he kept going, fueled by the thought of Fanny and their daughter, out there with the raiders. After hours of trudging, likely close to 15 miles, he spotted the faint glow of campfires. It was a large train, at least 40 wagons strong, circled up tight for the night. This wasn't just any group, it was the same outfit. Their smaller party had split from days earlier, chasing better grazing for the stock. Josiah stumbled in, hands on his knees, catching his breath as faces turned his way. Word of the massacre had beaten him there, carried by a couple of riders who'd bolted early. The camp buzzed with panic, men clutching rifles, eyes darting to every shadow. Women barking at kids to stay close. Some of the wives had even taken the reins, driving the teams so their husbands could stand guard, ready for an ambush that might never come. He didn't waste time. "They've got my wife." "My girl," Josiah said, voice hoarse, cutting through the chatter, as he faced a knot of men near the lead wagon. "I need help. Anyone who'll come with me to get them back." His plea hung there, but the looks he got were hard and tight. The train was already linking up with others, rolling through, piling defenses high. After hearing 5 men were dead, and the rest missing or captured, one guy, a wiry teamster with a beard full of tobacco spit, shook his head. "We ain't risking it. Kelly could be 200 of them out there." Maybe more. He wasn't wrong to worry. Later counts pegged the Ottawa at 200, but it didn't make the refusal sting less. No one stepped up. They were too busy eyeing the bluffs, expecting arrows to fly any second. Josiah paced the camp's edge, fists clenched, watching them load extra ammo and double-check harnesses. These folks weren't cowards. They'd crossed half the continent already, dodging storms and busted axles. But the massacre news had them spooked. 5 dead in minutes, wagons looted, captives hauled off. Historical records show fear like that wasn't rare. In '64, the Colorado War was kicking up dust across the region, and raids on small parties were spiking. Over 50 documented that year alone. Along the overland routes, this train wasn't about to split off and chase a war party into the hills. Not when they could hunker down and roll on with bigger numbers. Then a shout broke the tension. Andy, one of their hired hands, came tearing in from the dark, shirt soaked with sweat, eyes wild. "They're all gone, every last one," he yelled, stumbling to a stop. He froze mid-step when he saw Josiah, relief washing over his face. "Boss, you're alive. Thought they got you too." Andy had been with the small group, sent ahead to scout water, and must have circled back after the attack. Josiah grabbed his shoulder, steadying him. "Fanny and the girl, they took 'em. You see anything?" Andy shook his head, panting. "Just smoke and bodies when I passed through. Ran like hell to catch up here." Josiah nodded, jaw tight. Andy's escape lined up with the chaos. 2 others had made it out early too, spreading the alarm, but the train's refusal stood firm. They'd shelter him, sure, maybe spare some water and a rifle, but no one was riding out. The Ottawa had hit hard and fast. A calculated strike, some tie to settler sprawl, others to tribal alliances fraying under pressure. Either way, Josiah was on his own for now, stuck with a camp, too scared to move, and a trail growing colder by the hour. He'd have to figure the next play, find a patrol, a trader. Someone, because waiting wasn't an option. After linking up with a larger wagon train, Josiah Kelly didn't sit still for long. He convinced a handful of men, Andy among them, to head back to Little Box Elder Creek, where the Ottawa had hit on July 12, 1864. The trip wasn't easy, a good 20 miles west through rough hills, but they made it by midday. First stop was a grim one. A lone body sprawled near a busted wagon, a companion from another small group that had barely gotten away. They hauled him into their cart and pressed on to the main site. The wagon still stood half smashed, feathers and flour sacks strewn across the dirt. Josiah leaned on Andy's arm, legs shaky as they picked through the mess.